All right, so I'd like to start this series with default antennas. The antennas that may or may not come with your Chinese radio. All of these antennas came with a radio or a radio kit that I have previously purchased. None of these antennas I went out of my way to purchase them. It just kind of came with either a ham radio or a GRMS radio, which I'll get into just GRMS antennas in the future. Here I have my light VNA. It's already calibrated and everything. I don't need to go through the entire process like most other people on YouTube before doing anything that's related to a VNA. Yes, it can lose calibration a little bit over time, but realistically, we're just looking at ballpark stuff. So first we'll start with probably the most common antenna that comes with Baofangs. This little knockoff Nagoya 701. Doesn't have any labeling. It has some font down in the base. This commonly comes with GRMS radios too, because it claims that it has a range of 400 megahertz to 520 megahertz, and that is extremely optimistic, and we'll see in a second. I do have one of these SMA male-to-male adapters, but unfortunately it's very inconsistent. I think something's wrong with the center pin. So I have this little jank thing built up. It shouldn't create that much of a problem. Really hate that they added these flares here because it makes it so much harder to thread on. All right, so this right now is starting at, oh, that range is way too wide. No, that's perfect. On this side is 30 megahertz. This side is 600 megahertz. And what you're seeing here, of course, I'm sitting on top of my MacBook, which is a ground plane. The purple line is my SWR. The yellow line is the log mag, which basically means the resonance of the antenna. The blue line down here is the resistance of the antenna, which is important when you're doing outdoor antenna building, because you need to design balance around that and ununs. And the green line is the Smith chart. So the SWR, the lower the better. 1-to-1 is ideal, but you're not always going to achieve that, especially with an HT antenna. Honestly, 2-to-1 is still acceptable. A 2-to-1 balun is approximately like 11% loss in transmission rate. The log mag, I'm not 100% sure how log mag works, to be honest, but I do know it usually dips with SWR, and as it dips, it usually means better resonance. The blue line, the resistance, I think this first line here is about 50 ohms. You just want it to be about 50 ohms. Your log mag, you have, I get them backwards all the time. Either vertically is capacitance and inductance, and left and right is your resistance. Dead center is perfect. That's what we're looking for. This little green flag needs to be dead center. I'm actually going to refocus my camera because I realized that setting this on my MacBook, providing a odd ground plane, and this should make it a little bit easier to see what's going on. All right, so we have the most default antenna here, and we are going to assume that we are transmitting on 440. 440.4. Now, lightly holding this, you can see my flags. Right now it's set at 440.4. This is resonant before the 70 centimeter spectrum. And it's got a really low resistance just because it's not resonant. Where it really is resonant at is about 350 military band. Now, I like to run this test two different ways. I lightly hold the VNA, like I have the radio sitting on a desk, and then I like to simulate the death grip, putting my whole hand behind it and death gripping around it. And that gives us different results. It almost always, when I choke it like this, it'll lower the frequency that it's resonant on. So this is not a good 70 centimeter antenna. What about 2 meters? So let's go to 146.850. Surprisingly, as short as it is, it's a good 2 meter antenna. And the reason that is because these antennas, while it is possible to make a true dual band by making a fan vertical, these almost never do that. This is just a single driven element inside of here. And so they made this a 2 meter, probably like 1/8 wavelength or something like that. And so it's resonant on 2 meters. And it should be resonant again on 50 centimeters, which I don't know if that's even on here. Honestly, I don't know how that's working, how it's resonant again on 360. But this is basically a 2 meter antenna. And it is dual band. It's just the second band that it's resonant on is not at all useful to us. So this antenna, okay if you're using 2 meters, absolute trash on 70 centimeters. And then it's mega trash when it comes to GRMS. I am pretty sure this one actually came with a GRMS radio, but we'll give it the benefit of the doubt, because I honestly don't know what came with what. I have like 6 of these. Next one. This is definitely a Baofeng antenna. I think it probably came with a UV5R. Get this threaded on. You're not supposed to spin the antenna because you're basically routering it with that bit inside that hole. You're supposed to turn the outer ground. Honestly though, it can replace these adapters, so I'm just gonna spin it on to save some time. All right, so I can already see this is a 2 meter antenna. We're at about 446.850. Look at that. Not a bad 2 meter antenna. Got an SWR of about 1.8. And resistance is about 28 ohms, which you're going to have a problem with that no matter what with HT antennas. And then we give it the death grip like we're holding onto a radio, and it's still pretty much the same. When it comes to 70 centimeters, again, it's basically not existent. And this is why I like to leave the log mag on, even though I don't 100% understand how it works, is you can see there is no SWR dip. The SWR is about 5.6, but the log mag is still kind of dipping. So yes, it will transmit on 70 centimeters, but the resistance is also 12 ohms. It's just not ideal. So another reason why the first thing you should buy for your new radio is an antenna upgrade. Let's get into another common default. This probably came off of some kind of UV5R variant, as basic as it looks. All right. This antenna is just not resonant on anything. GRMS is a little over here, just right of 70 centimeters. Let's go to the lower band of 70 centimeters. So the way the band plan works too is usually your lower bands are supposed to be reserved for special things. Your mid bands are reserved for simplex, and then your upper bands are usually repeaters. So if you like repeaters, you should be testing closer to 450. If you like simplex, 440, and then HT, like UHF, VHF, it really doesn't matter too much. People just talk wherever. But that's something to remember. If you like repeaters, always check your antennas on the upper frequencies of each band. But if we go down to 420, it's kind of usable, but you're really not going to be using your HT on 420 too much. Resistance is all right. The log mag's kind of dipping. The SWR is 2.7. Go down to 2 meter. 144 even. And it's resonant just above 2 meters a little bit. SWR here is 7.5. The log mag doesn't start dipping down until 149, which is unusable. So again, this is one of the default antennas that comes with a radio. Upgrade your antenna right away if you get an antenna like that. I'm gonna save this one for last just because it's SMA male and I got to change my output. This came with one of my favorite radios, the AR-15 II. At first, I'm like, wow, this is a really nice antenna. It's kind of bulky, kind of durable. Maybe it's a good antenna. Until I hooked it up to the VNA. Still a neat looking antenna. Like one of these cheap antennas, but chunkier. Alright, so for 2 meters, it's a great antenna. I think it's maybe like a little shorter than quarter wavelength. And that's another thing I don't fully understand yet, is loading antennas. I know basically it's from having a Wolf River coil silver bullet. Basically your driven element is spiralized here to make the antenna electrically longer, and then your radiating element can be much shorter, because with the signal stick, hard to reach away, the signal stick is quarter wavelength 2 meters, and it's much longer than this, so it's definitely loaded in the base. So light grip, we're getting an SWR about 2.5, which is not ideal at all, but it's all right. Actually, if we go up to 146, 850, we got an SWR of 1.8. So that's more than usable for an HT antenna. Give it the good old death grip, and it actually improves. Lower down in the band. There we go. About 1.2 at 144 megahertz, giving it the HT death grip. And you can see that the green line too, the log mag, is almost, the flag is almost dead center. That's ideal. We kind of want it to be in this square ideally, because your HT antennas are too variable. If you're making a home HF antenna, yes, you can make things absolutely perfect because they're not moving around. You're not holding on to them. They're not being closer or further away from conductive objects like your body. So 2 meter, the upper band, it's just not working. For, did I call it 2 meter? 70 centimeter. Go down to the bottom of 70 centimeter, 420, and no matter what, it's just not resonant on 70. So this is an all right 2 meter antenna. But again, just upgrade your antenna. Most of these upgrades, most of the Abri upgrades and everything are about $20. So we have 2 different Abris here. They are both 771s. They just have different font for some reason. So I'm just going to quickly test those. This is the bold font 771. And we can see that, honestly, I like these antennas. These usually come in like a kit on Amazon when you buy the upgraded radio kit. That's why I have a lot of them. So for about 430 megahertz, we got an SWR of 1.8, which is good for an HT antenna. And the resistance is actually really close to 50 ohms. And you can see we're in that center box with the Smith chart. Give it the death grip, and it's too much capacitance. I think lower on the Smith chart is capacitance, because that's what you're adding with the death grip. Go to 2 meters, and it's not a 2 meter antenna. And I think Ham Radio Crash Course brings this up all the time, that a lot of antennas favor 70 centimeters over 2 meters. And usually when they're good at 2 meters, they don't like 70 centimeters. And we're seeing that right now. Given it the death grip, we do see a massive drop in SWR, but not usable because it is at 115 megahertz. So this can actually be used as an airband antenna, I guess, if you really wanted to, but you have to be holding onto the radio the entire time. And usually when you're listening to airband, you just kind of have it sitting on your desk while you're doing other things. One thing I do want to try with one of these antennas in the future is try snipping it down. Since these do come with GRMS radios, but they're not at all resonant on GRMS, I want to try trimming one. I just don't know how it's going to work when it has a loaded base. And then here's the identical one, except it has different font. This is the narrow font, the thin font, light font. And surprisingly, it's the exact same antenna. So again, the great airband antenna. Actually, let's give it the light grip. But yeah, it's still an airband antenna, light grip, but it's mostly a 70 centimeter antenna. And then we go up in the GRMS. Sorry, I had a burp. Go in the GRMS band. 163.2 is about as good as I'm getting. And it's nowhere near that SWR dip. It's still about 4.5. But yeah, not a GRMS antenna. Even though these commonly come with GRMS radios. Now finally, this guy off. This, I'm 90% sure came with a Baofeng UV5G, a GRMS radio, because for whatever reason, a lot of Radiodity's GRMS variants are SMA male. Get that on. And it is actually a GRMS antenna. That is surprising. I thought I was going to be able to shit on it. At 163, its SWR is 1.8, which is acceptable. Resistance is a little high, but we can see on the Smith chart, it's kind of in that center square that we want to, that big center window that we want it to be in, at least for an HT antenna. But this does perform far better at 70 centimeters. This is actually a really good 70 centimeter antenna. I think it's about a quarter wavelength, and it shows. We can get it all the way down to an SWR of 1.063 at 426 megahertz. That's really good for 70 centimeters. We'll give it the depth grip, and it actually chokes it down. But it is still 166 megahertz GRMS. It's still an SWR of about 2.1. 70 centimeters, go all the way down to 420. It's still an SWR of 177. Go up to 446. The SWR is still just below 2.0. So this is actually a good 70 centimeter antenna, even though it's aimed with a GRMS radio. But yeah, that is all of the default antennas. And it's just the point of this video is mostly just to show you if you should upgrade, and the answer is definitely yes. For about $20 you can get a much better antenna, and I'll go into that into a future video.